me. He's way too tall. Yeah, go to the next one, please, Steve. This is me. I'm Bob Williams, and I've had about 40 years of experience working in environmental projects associated with all kinds of energy projects, from nuclear power plants to windmills to fossil fuel generating stations, pipelines. I've worked in over 32 different states and have had a lot of very successful projects. I just wanted to bring this slide up because this is some preliminary stuff before I get into the meat of the topic of what I want to talk about. A lot of people don't think there's any natural gas drilling going on in New York State. This slide is just a map of where natural gas drilling is going on in New York State and continues to be going on in New York State. There are lots of formations, and most of you already know this, but the very first natural gas wells that were drilled in North America were drilled in New York State. They were drilled out in the western part of the state in 1821. This has continued on since then. Next slide. This slide here just represents the major geological sections of the different formations in New York State. The Marcellus Shale, which is the one that just lit up there, this is the hottest spot. The Marcellus Shale is larger than this in New York State, but this is the hottest spot. This is the spot where the Marcellus Shale is the best in New York State, and this is the area that the people will be looking at to probably drill in first. The Oriskany Sandstone's another one here, and the third one, when you hit it again, will be the Utica Shale. These are all the hot spots within the area here. The reason I brought this particular figure in is because this pertains to the area that we're in right now. You'll hear people talk about the Marcellus Shale extending all the way up to Syracuse, and are going to drill the Marcellus Shale up there. About a month ago, I did a presentation up in Madison County, and they had people come in ahead of me, a couple of weeks ahead of me, and talked about how they're going to drill the Marcellus Shale, they're going to hydrofrack it, and they were going to pollute all the groundwater. Well, it's just the easiest thing in the world to refute, because they're never drilling the Marcellus Shale in Madison County. It comes out of the ground in Madison County, so anybody tells you they're going to do that there, they're starting from ground zero. It's just not going to happen. This slide is of some interest to us because this is our area. This is Conklin, New York, and the yellow line that you see going across the slide, the yellow line is the state border. It's not actually there. You can't actually really find it, but it is on the map. It's here. There's the well site that you see there is the Carty Well. It's 1.2 miles south of the state line in the town of Halstead, I believe. It's the town of Halstead, just south of Conklin. It has 8 natural gas wells on it, one of them producing. One of the wells is producing, the other 7 are not. That one well is producing, and I just found this information out last week, that one well is producing 8 million cubic feet of gas a day. Before I go into the stuff, again, I want to go quickly through a few things that a lot of us will know about already. And I'm actually going to, this thing work? No. Yes, this working? Yes. Okay, good. I want to look at a couple of things quickly, and I only want to look at these because it's a good background for us. I want to look at the drilling site and the horizontal drilling process, a quick overview of the drilling unit, the pad, number of wells going to be on the pad, the drilling sequence, and the production value of each well. Go ahead. This is a typical drilling site, and this is one of the things that the Joint Landowners Coalition is really...
The mic's not on now.
It's...
Just got to be closer.
Yeah, hold it closer.
Do I just need to hold it closer as well? Okay, thank you. The Joint Landowners Coalition has been always from day one right up front on the drilling sites and on the stormwater pollution prevention plan and on the spill containment plan, because we knew from day one that one of the biggest problems, if we had a problem, will be from something that happened on the surface. We wanted these sites to be, these drilling pads, to be constructed in such a way that if there was some sort of a spill, it never left the pad, so that it could be cleaned up. There are lots of spills on lots of industrial sites, and if they're properly prepared, they can clean it up before it goes anyplace and contaminates anything. This drilling site happens to be a Chesapeake drilling site, and they've done all the stuff on their drilling sites in northern PA that I would consider correct. They have put down impermeable barriers, they've put down padding on top of it that locks together, they do all their work on top of it. They've gone to closed containment drilling, closed containments. And this is one of the things that the Joint Landowners, and from day one in our comments to the DEC, we want the closed containment drilling. We want it to happen like that, and it's happened. Next slide. This is just a quick overview of a construction of a well site. The biggest point here is that the state regulations, these are New York State regulations, require that wells be constructed to prevent zero movement of oil, gas, or water from one zone to the other. We don't want that to happen because obviously we don't want any of our groundwater polluted in any way as associated with this. But the gas companies don't want any movement anyway. They don't want movement to go from one formation into another porous formation, say a sandstone formation, because their job is to produce gas too. So besides not polluting the groundwater, they don't want to lose any of their gas production not into the groundwater, but into another formation that is porous. Each string of casing, and there are 4 of these strings of casing, each string of casing will have steel and it'll be surrounded by concrete. The concrete will be forced down on each individual one, and it will be forced down, and more than 25% of it has to come back to the surface. It has to harden it to a certain state before they can go on. Now, one of the things that's good in New York State, and this is a significant small difference in New York State that we don't have in other areas. In New York State, the current regulation, I'm not talking about the new regulation, I'm talking about the current regulation, require that if you're drilling a natural gas well and you hit a pocket of shallow gas, you have to stop at that point, you have to kill that well, you have to call the DEC in, they send their engineers meet with the company's engineers, and they figure out how they're going to continue constructing that gas well without contaminating the aquifer. That's a really significant difference. And that's one of the reasons why you don't hear about methane migration in New York State, is because they have that one small little difference, and it's a significant difference. This process ensures that there's going to be an integral impermeable steel and cement seal between the gas, the aquifers, and the natural gas source. Next one, please. Horizontal drilling. Horizontal drilling is an interesting thing because from the landowner's perspective, from day one, we have been for horizontal drilling because we know that once again, surface issues are going to be the big issue. Surface contamination, surface pollution, surface disturbance. And so horizontal drilling is the method that was developed a while ago that you can actually get away from that. Current regulations would allow someone, if they wanted to come into New York State and put a well in every 34 to 44 acres. And we don't want that. Right now, the New York State regulations on horizontal drilling in the Marcellus Shale is 1 pad for every square mile. They can actually put 1 pad in and do every square mile, the whole square mile from that. Once they drill the horizontal well, the vertical section is just like the vertical section of any well until they get to the area where they want to go, and then they turn and go horizontally. After they get all of the casings in, all of the cementing in, then they hydrofrack it. The hydrofracking is the thing that breaks up the shale and allows the gas to escape and come back to the surface. All right, now I'm just going to go through a quick sequence of how one of these well pads is put together. Hit the button again. First thing that happens is you lay out the drilling pad. In New York State, like I said, it's a square mile, 640 acres. It doesn't have to be square. It doesn't have to be square. It's more typical to be longitudinal. And it usually goes from northwest to southeast. First thing that happens is the drilling pad comes in. And after the drilling pad is in, the drilling pad will be 5 to 7 acres. And then they start putting the wells in. And what we've done here is we put 2 wells on this pad in year 1, then you hit it again, 2 more wells in year 2, and then 2 more wells in year 3. The reason that I put the slide together like this is purely because the regulation in the SGEIS will require that once you start one of these drilling units, this 1 square mile drilling unit, you have to complete your drilling activity within 3 years. It doesn't have to take that long. It doesn't have to take that long at all. In fact, we were down visiting a Cabot site a week and a half ago, and they can drill one of these wells every 16 days. Every 16 days they can drill one of these wells. So they could actually set up on this site in 8 times 16, whatever that is, 80 and 48, 128 days. They could virtually have all of the wells that they're going to put drilled on it. That doesn't mean they have to produce them. And if you think back a minute ago to that Carty well that I showed you that's just south of Conklin, the Carty well has 8 wells on it. 1 of them's producing gas. The other 7 are drilled but have not been completed. They have not been hydrofracking. So just one of them's producing gas. One of the things that the JLC, and this goes back to our recommendations again, we had recommended in our comments to the DEC and the SGEIS that we make these drilling units even larger, as large as they can do. Well, in Pennsylvania, they've been able to go much, much farther with these, and they actually have drilling units down there that are 1,280 acres, 2 square miles. And the reasons for that are simple, but if we hit the pad, we'll go through some of them quickly. one half of the surface disturbance, one pad instead of two, one gathering pipeline instead of two, one access road, one storm water plan because you only have to deal with one well pad, 7 to 10 acres of land left undisturbed. Twice the usual number of wells could be located on that, or it doesn't have to be a square or bigger, it could be longer also. I mean, you can look at the size any way you want to. You have the incentive to lay temporary pipelines for water distribution, a significant reduction in truck traffic, more efficient drilling rig use, safer and more efficient handling and recycling of drilling and hydraulic fracturing fluids, and improved potential for spill containment and stormwater runoff. Effectively monitor 2 well sites in a single location. This cuts down on the amount of staff that the DEC needs. Instead of having to run from site to site to site, if you have fewer sites, the DEC goes and they look at everything at the one site. You can reduce the evaluation time for permits, reduce the amount of DOT input on road usage, effectively reduce the number of roads impacted by heavy traffic, and more effectively site the pad to reduce noise and visual impacts in the neighborhoods you're going to put them in. Last, I think this is the last one, single environmental impact statement, reduce site preparation, reduce equipment installation, reduce pipeline costs, potential for multiple fracs with a single setup, consolidate flow back and consolidate noise abatement stuff. This leads to the thing that the joint landowners coalitions have been all about. The joint landowners coalitions have from day one gone through what's been going on. We've been looking at the way that it develops, we've been looking at the technology, and we continue to recommend better technology and better ways all along the line. Next slide. Now we're getting to the thing that I'm actually here to talk about. I'm actually here to talk about the ad valorem tax. Now, this is a recreation of a presentation that I got. I didn't mention this earlier on, but besides the stuff that you saw in the information about me up there, I'm also on the DEC's advisory panel for high-volume hydrofracking. And one of the things that happens to us on being on the panel is we get presentations from all different sections of the state's regulatory and finance people. And one of the presentations that we got was on the ad valorem tax and how the ad valorem tax works. The landowners coalitions, once again, are passionate, and I say passionate, about keeping the ad valorem tax. I'm going to give you a very simple difference between an ad valorem tax and a severance tax. The ad valorem tax is like a property tax. That means that the money that comes in from it stays local. It stays here. A severance tax goes to the state and it's redistributed. The reason that we like it, if we're going to have natural gas drilling in our area, we want the money that comes from the natural gas to stay in the area where any impact might be. What you have to do for the ad valorem tax is you have to think of a natural gas well somewhat like a piece of private property. Private property on a 5-acre lot, the drilling pad. The difference being, of course, is that the private residence belongs to one of us, whereas the drilling pad is actually leased or, like say, owned by the natural gas company. Each entity pays their respective property taxes. Go ahead. But to do that, we have to define the economic unit. And the economic unit is the gas well drilling site, all rights to the unextracted gas, all equipment and fixtures on the site, pipelines, compressor stations, equipment storage buildings, all of the above, and the well or many wells that might be on that single pad. Now the difference here, that there's an exception to this, because not all compressor stations and not all pipelines are owned by the same people who are drilling the gas wells. And in the town of Windsor that I live in, that's actually a fact. We have the laser pipeline that comes up across our land from Pennsylvania, bring Pennsylvania gas up, and we also have the Dunbar compressor station, which is on Dunbar Road. Those belong to a midstream company, Williams Gas, and they're not the ones that drilled the wells that are down there, okay? They drilled some of the wells, but this is a gathering system that comes up. It was owned by a midstream company. That pipeline and that compressor station is assessed like a piece of real property. And I'm going to just throw out some numbers for you right now because I just looked these up and anybody here can do it. If you go to the Broome County GIS website, you can look on the Dunbar compressor station and you can find what they're paying in property taxes. And it's kind of interesting. The Dunbar compressor station was assessed at $28 million. I'm sorry, full value was $28 million. At assessed value in the town of Windsor is $19 million. What they pay in taxes each year from this one compressor station, they pay to the county $199,000. They pay to the town of Windsor $75.5 million, or $199,000. They pay to the town of Windsor $75.5 thousand dollars, and they pay to the Windsor School District $508,000 per year. That's their tax. That's assessed because it's a piece of real property. It's assessed like any other building or it would be assessed. In order to get the unit of production, which is what the tax is based on, the New York State Office of Real Property Tax Services provides the local assessor with this. Or ORPS as it's called. ORPS gathers information on well data, royalties, gross income, expenses. The data is analyzed and normalized, and the unit of production value is calculated for the new tax year and distributed to the local tax assessor throughout the state. When they say normalize, what they do is they look at the data, and if they got any data that's a real outlier that just doesn't make any sense, they just don't use it. They just use the best data that they have. And here's how it works. In the current year, 2011, what they do is they do the production value computation, but they start with the sale price, and they subtract from the sale price the standard royalties and an overriding royalty. The standard royalty is what the landowner would get. An overriding royalty might be what a landman would get for putting all the contracts together, but they subtract this. Now, that money that's being subtracted isn't devoid of being taxed. That's going to be taxed as income tax. Income tax will be paid on the royalties. Next slide. And that gives you the gross operating income. From the gross operating income, operating expenses, reserves, depreciation, dry hole, and depletion are subtracted. And that gives you the net cash flow. And the net cash flow is divided by the discount rate. So what we've got is we've got a fraction here. We've got the money that comes out as a net cash flow up here, and then we've got another number in the denominator. The number that's in the denominator is just as important as the price of gas, because the number that's in the denominator is what sets the value, and the number in the denominator is 0.175, and when we were given this presentation by the people from ORPS, we asked what the 0.175 was. It's just been around for a long time, and nobody at the presentation could actually tell us what it was from. But it's divided by 0.175 plus the 5-year average of the Federal Reserve discount rate. Okay, plus the 5-year average of the federal discount rate. And we know right now, where we're in right now, the Federal Reserve discount rate is really low. So if you have a small denominator, even divided into a low gas price, you still come up with a pretty big number. And that equals your production value. All right. Now the unit of production value, which goes to the local assessor, is actually another computation involved in that. The unit of production value is based on the average of the typical income and expenses and operating data for 5 consecutive years, beginning with the 6th year back. You go back 6 years and come forward 5. And we'll have a demonstration up there on here which will make it clearer. All right, now here's how we're going to go through the calculation. The unit of production value calculation. We go back 6 years, come forward 5. So we went back to 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010. And these are the production values for those different years. Those numbers are divided by 5. And that will give you the unit of production value. The unit of production value is $9.80. Even though gas is cheap now, the unit of production value is $9.80. And that unit of production value is assessed on 1,000 cubic feet of natural gas. That's 1,000 cubic feet of natural gas is taxed at $9.80. Even though it might only be selling on the open market for $3, its tax value is $9.80. And that's for 2012. That's the number that would have been used in the taxes that came in January, and would have been used in the taxes that came in the school taxes in the fall of this year. That's the number that would have been used, $9.80. The number for next year, which is already out, has gone down somewhat. It's $9.12, and that comes out in March. That comes out as $9.12. Next slide. Now, the unit of production value is great, but now we need to know what the production is. And what I've done for this slide is I've taken right out of the SGEIS the decay rate and the production values. It's in Chapter 6. I think it's in Table 6.5. I think it's in Table 6.5. This is the production rates. It's in the SGEIS, what the DEC got out of well production all over Pennsylvania, and they put this together. For year one, 803 million cubic feet. Year two, 354. Year three, 258. Year four, 201. Year five, 166. And then it just levels out and goes on out like that for about 30 years. Now you take these numbers, go ahead. The local assessor receives a unit of production value from the state, and the local assessor computes the assessment using the following formula. The unit of production value, once again, it's $9.80. The production of the well, remember I said 803 million cubic feet per year? Well, if you drop the last three zeros off, it takes it down to 1,000, so it's 803,000 cubic feet, 1,000 cubic feet units. So when you multiply that by the equalization rate in the town of Vestal, it's 100%. And that gives the assessed value of the well at $7,869,400. So that one well operating in year one, that's at the 803, produces this much assessed valuation. And that would be taxed. That would be taxed just like a piece of property. So you pay the same tax rate on that $7,869,000 as you do on your garage. And that's just from one. That's one well. That's not 6 wells on a pad, or that's not everything else. But if we go back to that Carty well that I showed you just south of Conklin again, if that Carty well was up in Conklin, and they had the 8 wells on it, and only one of them would be producing, that's what you would expect, the production value from the one producing well. All right, here's what I've done. If we think back to, remember when I developed the well pad, and I brought two wells in year one, and then 2 wells in year 2, and then 2 wells in year 3. I've actually gone through and put a table together if that was actually a scenario of a well development, so you could see what kind of dollars you could expect in the local community as a result of it. If we go to the number, the column has 2 over the top of it, that's 2 wells producing at 803 million cubic feet per year. And what that would bring to the town of Vestal, your equalization rate and your tax rates here, this is all taken from the Broome County tax tables. County services would get $111,000, the town highway would get $42,000, the ambulance $19,900, fire protection would get $8,000, school taxes for those 2 wells that I put on there would be $404,959. Boom. Or a total taxes from that 2 wells in that one pad for that year of $558,000. Then I go to the next year, and what I did in the next year, we put 2 more wells on. Now we got 4 wells. I have 2 new wells at the higher rate of the 803, and I have 2 year-old wells producing at the lower rate of 354. And that year, that pad would bring in $160,000 in county services. Well, you can read down through it, and all the way down to school taxes off that one pad would be $583,000 for a total tax bill of $847. Then I went to year 3 and I put 2 more wells on. And once again, remember, they don't have to go 1, 2, 3, but you're required to do it in 3 years. You're required in New York State to do it in 3 years. If we had 2 new wells, 2 year-old wells, and 2 2-year-old wells in the 3rd year, you now have that one well pad bringing in $194,000 in county services, $74,000 for the town highway, $35,000 for ambulance, $15,000 for fire protection, and $706,000 would go to school taxes, for a total that year of $1,026,000 for taxes from that one well pad. And that's just a development from, that's just a development from that 1 square mile, that one pad that we put in there. It has the potential to do this. It has the potential to provide this much tax money locally, here, not in Albany, but here. Go ahead. And add to that, what you get is, we're also going to get millions of dollars in local ad valorem taxes. You're going to get thousands of jobs for New Yorkers. You're going to get millions of dollars paid in lease bonuses and royalties, and that people are going to spend that here, and that's going to increase the stuff. Millions of dollars are going to be paid in sales taxes to the county and to New York State. Millions in state income taxes, and I'll get to that in just a second. And millions donated to local charities, and probably decades of jobs and prosperity in our area. The next slide. One of the things that I hear on the advisory panel and comments that come in is that there's no money available to pay for any of the staff that we're going to have to add to the state. There's no money to pay for the new DEC staff or the new Department of Health staff. Well, I bring this up all the time, and the taxation people don't actually want to hear it, but one of the things that's happened already, this has already happened. This is not old stuff. In Tioga County, back in 2008, 61,000 acres of land was leased. 61,000 acres of land was leased. The people signed the lease for $2,000, they got $500 up first, and they were supposed to get the rest of it, the other $1,500, in 9 months. Fortuna was the company. They walked away from it. They walked away from it, so these people got to keep their $500 per acre that they got. Well, that $500 on 61,000 acres is $30 million. And the state got income taxes out of that, and I figured the state income tax at 7%. The state got income tax out of that of $2 million. They already have that money. They got $2 million in income tax. In the area that I live in, the Sanford-Windsor area, in 2008, 50,000 acres were leased over there at $2,411. That's $120 million that went to the landowners over there, and the state got income taxes, $8.5 million. In West Windsor, last spring, 2,600 acres were leased, $7 million was paid to the landowners. The state got their income tax now, because we just paid our income tax on last year's stuff, $500,000. Town of Maine had 3,400 acres, and they paid they got $6,800,000, and they paid $476,000 in income taxes. Kirkwood, Windsor, Conklin, and Vestal just recently, the last half of the Friendsville lease, the people were paid, the people that were in that, and I don't know exactly how many, but just the people that I know and have their names of, I got 1,225, and everybody tells me that's low. 1,225 acres, that's $6 million. This money hasn't been paid in income taxes yet, but the state's going to get out of that $471,000. And in West Windsor, back in 2008, Alton leased 2,000 acres, and the state received $350,000 in income taxes for that. The point I'm making is, if they tell you that there's no money to pay the people that we're going to need, and we will need these people, there's no money to pay the people that we're going to need, and that the landowners should come up and pay these, with money to pay these people, I say the landowners have come up with money to pay these people, and they're going to continue to come up with money to pay these people. The state's already received over $12 million with no regulatory input on anybody's land that has leased to a gas company. And the Joint Landowners Coalition, of which your coalition is a member, we have 800,000 acres in our coalitions around the state. You take 800,000 acres and you lease it, pick a number, I don't care what it is, pick $2,000 an acre. The amount of income tax that the state's going to receive from that $2,000 an acre is going to be a tremendous amount of money. That's just in the upfront payments. And then when the gas starts coming in royalties, the amount of income tax that they're going to receive out of that is going to be hundreds of millions of dollars. There's lots of money to pay for staff. Lots of money. Lots of money to pay for staff and to keep the ad valorem tax here. That's it. I'm done. Thank you.